How many of you have heard scientists talk about, especially many years ago, they talked about you only use 10% of your potential. You ever heard that? And then the Stanford Brain Research Institute said, you don't even use that much. It's more like 2% of our potential. So what about, where is that other 98% of our potential that we have, you know? How many of you would like to tap into that other 98% of your potential? Raise your hand. Yes, wouldn't that be wonderful? Well, we're in the process here. We're on the journey. I remember when I was in college a few years ago and wondering, I wonder if Jesus tapped into that other 98% of the potential. I wonder if other great saints and sages like Yogananda and Moses and Lao Tzu and Krishna and Buddha tapped into that other 98%. And that's what I believe. You know, Charles Fillmore, co-founder of Unity, had a very unique understanding of what Jesus's teachings were all about, particularly his idea of the 12 powers, your 12 spiritual powers. You could call them gifts. You could look at them in that way. And he believed that all of us have 12 spiritual powers that are part of our divinity. They're part of our spiritual nature. One of the ideas in Unity is the idea of Christ. Some people think of Christ as Jesus. It's not Jesus' last name. Jesus' last name was not Christ. He was not the son of Mr. and Mrs. Christ. Christ refers to the divinity that Jesus experienced and expressed and unfolded. Jesus, the man who was born in Bethlehem, grew up in Nazareth, expressed his Christ potential, his divinity, the divine potential, and said, that which I do, you can do in greater works. Now, I know I mention Jesus a lot. I was raised Jewish, and I was bar mitzvahed in an Orthodox temple. My family are connected with the Kohen, which was the priestly class in Judaism. And my route to Jesus came through the philosophy, Eastern philosophy, through the teachings of yoga and the philosophy of yoga, and I was searching, and I asked, well, what about this guy, Jesus? You know, he's influenced billions of people. Let me learn more about him. And then I learned from a great yoga teacher, the late Swami Satchidananda, the founder of Integral Yoga, who said Jesus is just like you and me. He discovered and expressed his divinity. And then I later found Unity, which was saying, yes, that's what Jesus was all about, and we can see it in his teachings. So Charles Fillmore said that these 12 powers make up the Christ in you and in me. They make up our divinity, and that each of the disciples represents one of these powers. So let's talk about the first two powers that you have and that I have. And the first power is faith, represented by Peter. Peter was the first disciple Jesus called. And Peter is considered by many to be the greatest of the disciples, if we were to compare them. He was a great disciple. And Peter represents faith. Why does Peter represent faith? Well, there was a time where Jesus was called the Mount of Transfiguration, and Jesus was testing his disciples and trying to hear what were they hearing. And he said, who do people say that I am? And they were looking at Jesus's personality, and they were going, well, some people think you're the reincarnate, you know, you're so-and-so, and you're this prophet, and you're that prophet. And so they were looking at his personality. And then Peter, whose name was actually Simon, which means hearing. And he spoke up. He said, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." Peter looked beyond the personality and saw the potential of what Jesus was expressing, that Jesus was more than his personality. He was a spiritual being. He could see that divinity flowing through Jesus. And Jesus acknowledged him that flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, Simon, but the Father within. And he said, "I'm going to call you Peter." He renamed him. "I'm going to call you Peter." Peter is a word that means rock in Greek. "Thou art Peter, and upon this rock I'm going to build my church." Not a physical church, not a physical structure. The church is consciousness. It's on this intuitive faith that consciousness is developed. You see, Simon, which means hearing, he was hearing his intuitiveness. He was hearing his inner spiritual nature. He was perceiving the reality beyond the personality. See, and that's one of Charles Fillmore's definitions of faith. Faith is the perceiving power of the mind. Simon perceived that the greater than the personality of Jesus. He was perceiving the divinity of Jesus. He was perceiving that potential. That's faith. Faith is perceiving, yeah, this looks like a solid world. Yeah, everything looks solid. It looks very material to me. And yet faith perceives what science has been confirming, which is it's not really solid, ladies, and there's more to it than what it appears to be. Even science is confirming that there's more than meets the eye, isn't it? Science says it's all energy. It's energy that becomes matter, and that there's a quantum field of light that is popping in and out. Leptons, bosons, and quarks from the quantum field of light are popping in and out in every moment, creating and manifesting as what we perceive with our senses. And so what we see with our senses is not all there is. And through the perceiving power of the mind, our faith faculty, when we start to believe that there is a presence, an intelligence, a power that is underneath all, and the great yogi sages like Yogananda tell us that there is this presence that is transcendent to all creation, and that it begins to vibrate itself as light and energy, which manifests as what we see. That what we see are the very thoughts of God. God is thinking everything into manifestation, including us. Now, how do you know that? You know that through the faith. Through faith. And believing is a first step. We start to go, okay, let me believe in this invisible presence that these saints and sages have taught about and others have professed, and let me have faith in this activity working in my life and see what happens. How many of you have done that before? And how many of you have seen good things happen? Raise your hand in your life. When you have had faith in this invisible presence. When we start to have faith in this invisible presence, we are strengthening our faith faculty. We are strengthening, we are activating our faith power that's inside of us. It's a gift that we have that we can activate in our life. Unity teaches there's one presence and one power in the universe, all good. It's all good, it's omnipresent, it's omniscience, it's all good. And by putting our attention and faith and looking for the good in our life, we're developing our faith faculty. Now, how do we develop our faith faculty? We develop it by keeping that consciousness as much as possible in our mind, looking for this presence and activity of good. St. Paul, who said, which by the way, his writings are the earliest writings we have in the Bible, were St. Paul's writings. The four Gospels came a little later than Paul's writings. St. Paul said, think upon those things that are beautiful, those things that are noble, those things that are good. Think on those things. That's how we develop our faith faculty. If God is omnipresent and God is in all people and all things, then I want to keep my mind and look for the good in people and in things. I want to have faith that God is working in my life, in other people. That doesn't mean being naive, however, either, right? Because part of it is listening to your intuition. And when your intuition says, oh, wait a minute, you got to listen to that. That's having faith too. So this is developing the faith faculty. Acknowledging the one presence and power in your life. And that's a type of giving. In his book, The 12 Powers of Man, Charles Fillmore writes about each of the powers. And he says that you've got to give in order to receive abundance. He says there are plenty of metaphysicians who expect God's abundance to come into their life without giving anything. He said you have to give in your life in order for God's abundance to flow into your life. It's not a matter of just putting pictures of abundance on the wall and affirming, I am abundantly blessed. You've got to release greater good into your life through giving. And one of the ways that we give is, one of the best and greatest ways that we give is giving our attention to Spirit. Giving our attention to God. He talks about Abraham in the Old Testament. Now, Abraham was the father of the Jewish people, right? He's known as the father of the Jewish people. He's in the Hebrew Bible. You look in Genesis, and God spoke to Abraham. His name was Abram in the beginning, another name change. How many of you heard about gurus giving people different names, right? You go in, and your name is John James, and you come out Saraswati something other, You get a new name. Well, it happened in the Bible. It represents a change in consciousness. Abram means exalted father. And what that referring to is the presence and activity of God that is omniscient, omnipresent, everywhere present, and it's the source of all, the exalted presence. Abram hears the voice of God and says, you're going to get some land, your people are going to become a great nation, and you all are going to be a blessing to other people. But here's what you got to do. And Abraham represents obedience and faith. Why? Because he heard the voice and he followed it. He wanted to do what Spirit, what God, what the presence, whatever we call that, was guiding him to do. That was his focus. He was giving attention to Spirit. When we make Spirit the number one thing in our life, we are giving. And in our giving, we receive abundantly. We receive abundantly. And you may know that story, which is kind of a strange story to us nowadays, where he takes his firstborn son. How many of you know that story? Isaac. Now, before that happened, Abraham's wife, Sarah, they were trying to have a child, a son, for many, many years so that the name would continue on. And they couldn't. And so in her older years, God said to Abraham, and she was eavesdropping, he said, you're going to have a son. And she was eavesdropping, and when she heard that, she laughed. Right. And the Hebrew writers were very clever. The word for laughter is titzchak. The word for Isaac, the name of the son, is Yitzchak. So there's a play on words there. So they had Yitzchak through faith. Isaac, Yitzchak is the Hebrew for Isaac. And so their faith, that happened, and now Abraham is asked to offer up his firstborn son in a sacrifice. Whoa. Remember, this was a long time ago, right? A long time ago. 1,500 years or more before Jesus even came onto the scene. But imagine, you're asked to bring your firstborn child who, by a miracle, your wife got pregnant, or you got pregnant, and you're going to have this child who is going to carry on the nation of the future that God promised you. You're going to have a great nation. Well, this is the son is the link to the future. And you're asked to sacrifice your beloved only son who is the link to your future. And what does Abraham do? He's willing to do that. He's willing to give up everything in order to follow, as he understands it, the guidance and activity of spirit. And the book says that when the knife was raised, he suddenly received the guidance, no, don't do that. And he saw a ram in the thicket. And so the ram becomes the sacrifice instead of his son, which Charles Fillmore explains that you don't have to give up what's precious to you in life. However, it's important to make God your number one focus. That's what Abraham did. Abraham made God the number one focus in his life. And he didn't have to give up his beloved son. But in consciousness, he did. In consciousness, he had renounced his attachment to it. He had renounced his attachment to the most precious thing in his life. And that can be scary. And oftentimes people have to be sick and tired of being sick and tired before they truly surrender themselves to that presence and activity. I know I did. I know when I was my first year of college and feeling lost and, feeling perhaps burnout or depressed and wondering what's the purpose of life and all of that. That's when I started on my journey because the world was no longer doing it for me anymore. Yogananda talked about reaching that point of anguishing monotony where the world doesn't do it anymore. And so it became a journey, a search for God. This is where Jesus said, "Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all these things will be added unto you." So what are we saying? You're going to have to give up stuff? No. But making God first is a form of giving. When we put God first, we are giving to the divine, and then we are receiving from the divine. And that's what we're talking about. Activating our faith faculty through keeping our minds on God's presence, on the good that's in our life, and also you can affirm. Affirming faith is a good way to activate that principle. I like his affirmation, which is, I have faith in God, I have faith in spirit, I have faith in the invisible. I don't know about you, but I like that. I have faith in the invisible, because it's invisible, isn't it? You see manifestations of it, but it's invisible, except to our inner eye. So would you join me in knowing, I have faith in God. Together? I have faith in God. I have faith in spirit.
I have faith in spirit.
I have faith in the invisible.
I have faith in the invisible.
and you can create your own affirmations to activate your faith quality. Now, the next power is strength, and they're related. Interestingly enough, strength is represented by the disciple Andrew. Peter and Andrew were brothers. And Andrew in Greek means strength. Andrew represents strength. All right, so we talk about having faith in this presence and activity of good working in our lives, but what if something really challenging is happening in your life? What if something really difficult is going on in your life? It takes strength, doesn't it, to keep having faith that good is unfolding in your life and in this situation? It takes a strength. Strength in mind of persistence, a strength in body of vitality and strength to be able to do what you need to do. It takes a strength in spirit to keep on keeping on. That's the quality of strength we're talking about. When you have a goal or a dream, as we talked about last week, you wrote some goals, some ideas down perhaps if you participated last week, and you had some things that you want to be in 2023. You have some things that you want to accomplish and experience in 2023, and you run into obstacles. There are going to be obstacles. It's part of it, isn't it? If it were so easy, everybody would be doing it. Right? Everyone would have a best-selling book. Everybody would have a flourishing business. Everybody would have a wonderful, happy relationship. Everybody would have great health. Everyone would have all kinds of wonderful things going on. But it takes strength to keep on keeping on, to do the things that we need to do to have these things, to experience these things. And the greatest goal, I believe, is this: the greatest meaning of life is to unblock ourselves, to free up all this junk that we have buried inside of ourselves so that we can experience our spontaneous inner joy, our spontaneous inner peace, our spontaneous inner love, and to walk in a continual awareness of this inner state of bliss and happiness. How many of y'all are excited about walking in a continuous state of bliss and happiness? Wow, I mean, that's, for some, that's like, well, let me just be able to pay the bills by the end of the month. I'm happy to do that. Yeah, it's all part of the same process, though. You know, it's all part of the same process. And you need strength to be able to keep on keeping on. How do you develop strength? How do you develop this spiritual quality of strength? Well, we all know about exercise, you know, how that helps strengthen your body, and eating proper nutrition strengthens your body, and exercise makes you smarter than you would if you don't, and it helps give you strength. That's important. Having that physical vitality is important, but that's not the whole thing. There's a spiritual power, a spiritual strength that's also very important. And one way we can experience that is to get still and quiet. Prayer and meditation on a daily basis, taking time to be still, to connect, sort of like a battery. You know, battery, you plug in a battery, plug in your phone when it's low on energy, and it starts to be recharged, doesn't it? Plug in that charge. I love when you plug it in and you hear that little thing go off on the phone and it starts. Don't you love that? I love that sound. And now it's starting to charge up again. You can use that phone more. Well, we got to plug in and charge ourselves up on a regular basis as well, in order to receive that spiritual strength that's inside of us. That's important. It's something that nothing outside can give you. You know, this inner strength. Let me tell you, when the whole world around you seems like it's falling apart, and you got a beloved one who just passed away, who you've spent your whole life with and been a big part of your life, nothing's going to give you the comfort like this presence and activity of spirit within you. When you are in a situation at work or some other situation where it seems like you're the bad guy and everybody's ganging up on you and you're wondering, this is not fair, this is unjust, you know what's going to give you the strength to move through it? The presence and activity of spirit That's what's going to give you the strength to move through it. That's what's going to help you get up when you've been knocked down from life. I know that from personal experience. And so that strength, I love the verse, those who wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. How many of you want to run and not be weary and walk and not faint? Yes, the word wait comes from the Hebrew word kava, which means to bind together. To bind your lower self with your higher self, to bind together, to unite with that infinite source of strength that's inside of you. When you take time to be still, and it could be just a couple of minutes, to be still, to pray, to get still, and to know that presence, you are plugging in yourself into that cosmic source that can infill you with strength, with the wings of eagles. That doesn't mean you don't take time to rest. That doesn't mean you don't take time to play. That doesn't mean you just keep going like a battery. It means that you also provide part of your life to plug in through prayer and meditation to be filled up from the inside out. I've been doing ministry for over 30 years. When I was in ministerial school, I was told the average unity minister lasts about 2.5, 3 years in ministry. And I believe that one of the reasons that's the case is because people go, even ministers go, and they don't take time to plug in to that infinite cosmic energy source that is within you, the source of strength. And you can affirm, like you do with faith, you can affirm during the day something like, I am strong in the Lord and in the strength of His might. I am strong in the Lord and in the strength of His might. Would you like to affirm that with me together? I am strong in the Lord and in the strength of His might. Again, I am strong in the Lord and in the strength of His might. Now, you don't have to use the word Lord. You can use whatever word you want. You're affirming strength. You're not looking at yourself as, oh, I'm so weak, I can't. Maybe you're going to have moments where you feel weak, but don't dwell on that. Don't identify with that. You're not weak. You're created in the image and likeness of God. When you say, I'm weak, how am I going to do it? I can't do it. I can't make it. You're basically denying your faith faculty. You're saying, oh, I don't believe there's one presence and power. I don't believe that presence and power is expressing as me. No. Your faith says, I believe in God. I believe in spirit. I believe I'm in the image of God. And I believe that I am strong. There's a scripture in the Bible that says, let the weak say, I am strong. Let the weak say, I am strong. You are strong. That's the key. You are strong. You have spiritual strength. Affirm that strength. Know that strength. Talk about that strength. Don't be telling everybody, oh, I don't know how I'm going to make it and get through this and then, yeah. No, don't affirm. That's where you're putting your faith. Faith is a faculty that you have, as we said. You have faith. The question is, where are you putting it? Are you putting it in negativity? Or are you putting it in the truth, in God's activity in your life? Putting faith in the good that's unfolding in your life? Are you putting faith in the good that is actually in other people? Or are you listening to what the news tells you? The news tells you all the bad stuff mostly, doesn't it? When you read the headlines, well, this is the problem here, and this is the problem in India, and this is the problem in Washington, and this is the problem. It's one problem after another. And then depending on your watch list on your television set, maybe the stuff you watch is telling you, oh my God, this is a dangerous place. I got the mafia movie, and I've got the lover who killed her lover movie, and I've got the corporate takeover movie, and the family movie where they're all nuts and crazy. And, what are we filling our minds with? all of that impacts how we feel. And I have to watch that for myself too, believe me. If I start feeling sad for no reason, I have to think, well, what did you spend your time watching? I guess another Holocaust movie can do something, can cause that. So faith is acknowledging the one activity of good, and it's giving. We're giving our attention to that good that's active in our life. That's a form of giving. And when you give, you are receiving from the universe. That's part of the abundance principle. And then our strength power, your power of strength. You are not weak. You are created in the image of God. You are strong. And the only thing that you need to do is affirm that strength. Think that strength. Identify with that strength. That doesn't mean you don't get help from people. That doesn't mean you don't consult people. That doesn't mean you don't have coaches. It doesn't mean you don't exercise or eat nutrition and get enough rest. It doesn't mean you're going to run around 24 hours a day going, I'm strong in the Lord, I don't need rest. No, because then you might need a hospital if you go around like that. No, but it does mean my spirit is strong in the Lord and in the power of His might. You are God's child. You are Spirit's child. You are her image and likeness. She is living herself as you. You are the incarnation of this presence and activity of Spirit. You and I have so much more potential that we have yet to realize. I mean, if we're honest with ourselves, we're babies in the realization of this. We are, like teenagers. We're like, well, we're waking up. Oh, Jesus really meant that? Oh, okay. Let me make a note about that, okay? I have faith in God. We're growing in our awareness of this. And there's a whole lot more that we can know and discover. So let's get still for a moment. We thank you, Father, Mother God, for your reminder of who we are, spiritual beings having a human experience. We acknowledge our 12 spiritual powers, our 12 gifts that you have given us. And we activate our 2 powers today and this week, activating our faith faculty. I have faith in your presence. And I activate my strength power. I am strong in your presence. I am strong, and I am receptive to your flow, just like Simon Peter. I listen, I hear your presence. I'm receptive to your presence, and I am filled with faith, and I am filled with strength. I know sometimes I waver in that faith, just like Peter did. Remember God. You remember Peter, God. Peter wavered in his faith too, right? He was walking on the water and started to sink, and then he regained his faith and he was lifted up. Peter denied Jesus 3 times. Yeah, well, my faith can waver too, but I can always get back up, and I can always remember the truth that you are present and active in my life and in the universe. And I place my faith in you, Spirit. Thank you for your guidance and direction. Thank you for this beautiful spiritual community in which we can support one another. And thank you for all the many different ways that you are unfolding and expressing in our lives. And we are so truly, truly grateful. And so it is. Amen.